Oh, hey, it's time for World Breach Report number 2. I'm your host, Sean Kennedy, with your weekly update about unseen forces, outworld entities, and the forces of darkness. And I like to call the forces of darkness TFOD, the forces of darkness. Makes kind of sense, because it seems like in this day and age, there's a lot more forces of darkness that have been screwing around with our society than you can remember. You may not know this, but I'm actually a little bit older than your average duck. How long do ducks live? That's something I should be aware of if I'm going to be older than the average one. But I've seen a lot of changes, especially within the internet. I've been rolling around the web for a little while, and I've noticed that the whole thing has gotten kind of controlling. A little more so than you might expect, even more than I expected when I was making all sorts of ideas and predictions about what would happen next. But throughout all this, I've always been super fascinated with the paranormal and an occult. And as we move forwards, the information that's coming out now is becoming so incredibly, well, it's coming at you fast. And I think what's going to happen is that there's, like they talked about with Project, I think it was Bluebeam, where they say the aliens are going to attack and everything. I don't think it's aliens. I don't think that's what's going on. But we're going to get all into this later. And I'll be sure to bring all my receipts and the homework today, which you'll be able to follow up on. I've probably got about, more than 40 hours worth of video linked that if you can get through that, I'm pretty sure you'll understand the logic that I've come to. But let's get into some of the week's reports. First of all, I got a follow-up here on that MIT professor, Nuno Loureiro, which is not sketchy at all about how this guy died. But remember last week that MIT professor, Nuno Loureiro, got murdered. He was the one working on fusion and free energy and stuff. Yeah, so let's just get into the report here. Claudio Neves Valente, a former Brown University student, has been identified as the gunman in the fatal shooting at Brown and as the murderer of the MIT professor Nuno Loureiro. Valente, 48, who was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after a week-long manhunt. He was found in a self-storage facility, which is where I'd go to kill myself for sure. He opened fire at Brown University, killing 2 students and injuring 9 others. Valente previously studied with Loureiro in Portugal. Authorities say witnesses involved in the Brown shooting reported Valente was barking like a dog during the attack. Other witnesses claimed he said nothing. And then here's the weird part. He said authorities also linked him to Loureiro's murder through surveillance footage and rental car records, which is, I guess, a little odd. Valente managed to evade capture using methods to disguise his location. So he's using methods to disguise his location, but he got caught with his rental car records. The motive for his action remains unclear. Yeah, this isn't sketchy at all. I find it, kind of convenient that this guy did this stuff and then now he's dead and it's all sort of like glossed over. Of course, there's been presidential assassination attempts which have done similar things, and then nobody knows whatever happened. And of course, there's a lot of people who've been gone through stuff. In this particular time when this is happening, there's a Charlie Kirk thing going on. But even before then, you've got the whole JFK thing, and you've got other, I don't know. I try not to get too political with this channel. I'm not going to get political with this channel, and because I think all of that is just part of this bread and circus, which may be being used to control us. But there's something, we'll get more into why that's happening, but let's just know for now that I think all of us can pretty much realize that we're all being controlled. Like our Ben Bendikian wrote a book back in the day called The Media Monopoly, where he said everything was controlled by like 5 people. And that was like in 1995. So it's probably been consolidated now to like 1 or 2. Probably 1, and if it is 1, it's probably 1 controlling group. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, shall we? Also, in this past week, there was a weird moon strike, which kind of got noticed on the side. Now, this was an interesting one. Sky-gazing astronomers have spotted a sudden, bold flash of light on the moon caused by an astronomical smash-up. The culprit is still being investigated. We don't know. It may have something to do with one of the strangest space objects we know of. The dramatic event was detected by the Armagh Observatory and Planetarium, AOP, in Northern Ireland at precisely 3:09 a.m. UTC on December 12, 2025. No, they weren't drunk. It was spotted by Andrew Marshall Lee, a final year PhD student at the observatory using the ARMA robotic telescope, and remarkably, he saw it unfold live on his screen. This makes it extra special and saved me hours of processing the recordings later. He said, I reasonably think that I could do many years of observance of these things and never see that again. Marshall Lee told IFL Science. The tiny flash was a result of a small object, perhaps no larger than a golf ball, crashing into the moon at breakneck speed. Now, that's interesting. Perhaps no smaller than a golf ball, or no larger than a golf ball, but you just said you don't know what it was. So now you're saying it's an object that's probably not bigger than this. As the hurtling object met the lunar surface, its kinetic energy was instantly converted into heat and life, producing a short outburst that's visible from the Earth with the help of a fancy telescope. Now, the thing is, though, is that this was originally detected and made popular because there were monster hunters with telescopes called, recreational astronomers. But they're the ones who've been watching the skies, and they're becoming a real pain to those forces of darkness that are trying to control us because they can see stuff. And, I mean, the private astronomy, the personal recreational astronomy crowd, those guys they're hardcore, man. Like, these people are into this stuff. So when they start sleuthing and seeing that there's stuff going on the moon, they have to come up with some sort of an explanation for what's happening. Now, if you want to know more about why I think this is super significant, you should check out the episode on the Y-Files called The Moon is Weird. No, really, the moon does not really make sense. And when you go through that, you look at things that make this flash on the moon, and they do this all the time in the news. They'll talk about there was a flash. It was on the dark side of the moon. We think it was a golf ball. And then they'll purposely ignore things like translunar phenomenon, where there's like lights and clouds of light widely recognized that have floated across the moon. There's a blue light, which is constantly recorded in a single crater on the moon all the time. Not disputed. Everybody knows it's there. They're like, oh yeah, we don't know what that is. We suspect it's a gas. And I'm like, yeah. And, there's other things like, why are all the craters the same depth on the moon? Like, you look on Earth and there's like a huge crater. It's a little deeper because it's a bigger crater, more mass. And yet, on the moon, if you look at all the pictures of the moon, all the craters are exactly the same depth. Why is that? Why is that exactly? Why is as you go deeper in the moon, the dirt gets newer? And this is what they've released. This isn't like some wild conspiracy theory. And then, of course, we go with all the NASA astronomers who have said things like, it's easier to explain why the moon is not there rather than the moon is there, why the moon rang like a bell when we crashed a lunar probe into it. What is that about? So there's some very, very weird stuff about the moon. And let's not forget about how the moon affects our tides and basically makes our planet a bit of a coral reef in a deep sea of the void where life can flourish. And I think that's key, considering the fact that, the Zulus back in the day remember a time when there was no moon. Interesting. But more on that in the homework. Also in space, nothing to worry about. It's just a runaway Chthonian god that's been, a black hole, which, if you look at a runaway black hole and a Chthonian god, they're basically the same thing. Astronomers have made a truly mind-boggling discovery using the James Webb Telescope. A runaway black hole 10 million times larger than the sun. Yeah, that's great. 10 million times larger than the sun. Rocketing through space at a staggering 2.2 million miles per hour or 1,000 kilometers per second. But if it's like 10 million times larger than the sun based on its size. I guess it's not actually moving that fast based on its size. You know what I mean? If you see what it makes, it's so big, so it's not even moving its own body length. But anyway, that only makes this the first confirmed runaway supermassive black hole. But this object is also one of the fastest moving bodies ever detected. Rocketing through its home, a pair of galaxies named the Cosmic Owl, there's the owls again, at 3,000 times the speed of sound at sea level here on Earth. So it's doing Mach 3000 through the galaxy, 10 million times the size of the sun. If that isn't astounding enough, astounding would not be the word I would use there. The black hole is pushing forward with a literal galaxy-sized bow shock. A galaxy-sized bow shock of matter in front of it, while simultaneously dragging a 200,000 light-year long tail behind it. What? 200,000 long light-year tail? That's like the nearest, like Proxima Centauri is only 4 light years away. And this has got a 200,000 long tail behind it, within which gas is accumulating and triggering star formation. Like, that's crazy pants. Like, that's just the most staggering. Like, you want to feel small and insignificant? This story's doing it for me. It boggles the mind. Yeah, boggle. Boggle, how about stark screaming terror? How about the absolute hideousness of the immensity of the galaxy? The Discovery team leader, Peter Van Dokkum of Yale University, told Space.com. I wonder if he's part of Skull and Bones. Are they at Yale? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know if they let astronomers in there. The forces that are needed to dislodge such a massive black hole from its home are enormous. Wait, what? What? Is this like Big Bird? You know, because they say there's something that is needed to dislodge something that's 10 million, a black hole 10 million times the size of the sun. And like, it's the same thing as Big Bird. So if this was Big Bird, you notice they called it Big Bird, which implies that it's not the biggest bird. So that implies that on Sesame Street, there was yet an even larger bird that we were not aware of. Something to think about. But anyway, so something dislodged a black hole that is 10 million times the size of the sun, and then rocketed through the galaxy at Mach 3000. That is some comforting stuff. You know, they'll talk about stories like this, and, you know, because they know it's so incredibly, like, far-fetched for us that we can't even put that into perspective. And now, from Psychology Today, we have another story, and this one, this is going to be hard to get through for me. It is. It's going to be difficult. But the story is titled, and I'm not making this, "Why is no one talking about the aliens?" Like, I'm right here, bro. Like, right here. What do you mean no one is talking about the aliens? I have literally more than 40 hours of homework video of every single kind of professional from every walk of life talking about aliens. Everyone's talking about aliens but you, Psychology Today. But anyway, let's see if we can get through this article. Something very significant has been happening in plain sight, and almost no one seems to be, nobody notices. Age of disclosure just came in. Nobody knows it. Nobody sees this. Over the past few years, there have been televised congressional hearings, repeated news segments across major networks, and a recent release of a mind-blowing documentary called The Age of Disclosure that brings much of this information together, featuring on-the-record disclosures and sworn testimony from dozens of current and former high-level U.S. government, military, and intelligence officials describing secret classified government programs tasked with investigating unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, which used to be called UFOs. But that was back when they were, vilifying everyone who saw these things and talked about it. This is back before, they were basically pilots were losing their jobs. No one was allowed to talk about this stuff. So it's probably that no one was talking about this, Psychology Today, because they'd lose their livelihood. And you've created an environment through, I'm sure, no accidental psyop from the government to make it seem like anybody who talks about this stuff is an absolute idiot and is not, accountable, and they bring it up in court. Didn't you claim, you said you saw this man take the shot, but didn't you also say you saw a UFO? Wasn't there like a presidential candidate who said he saw a UFO and they made him look like a clown? I mean, the level of memory loss within the general public is absolutely staggering, and it's getting shorter every day. But okay, I'm getting ahead of it. These officials describe large numbers of sightings, unexplained aircraft. No, they're not aircraft. I mean, I love the language here, the subtle programming. Recovered crash materials, they say, are not consistent with known human technology, because they say that, And the remains of non-human biologics, like animals are non-human biologics. I love the way they say this, like non-human intelligence. Yeah, that's like a dolphin, an elephant, your dog. Anyway, at this point, All of this points to the same unsettling idea. Mankind is not alone in the universe. Well, no, duh. Okay. If this were any other topic with implications this big, it would dominate the conversations. It would be debated by dinner tables, dissected and argued about endlessly by pundits and influencers online, which they're doing. That's why you're here. That's why we're all doing this. Instead, people seem to be oddly quiet about it altogether. Steven Spielberg's not. I mean, he's just coming out with, Disclosure, the movie. You can see the trailer everywhere. For many people, even if they hear it, the information barely seems to register, while others just reject it or don't engage it at all. From a psychological standpoint, the collective lack of interest is almost more interesting than the claims themselves. Yeah. Well, okay. The question is, why is what is possibly mankind's greatest discovery barely on most people's radar? Well, it probably is on their radar. It probably is. But, you've made it pretty much the kiss of death to talk about UFOs or the concept of alien contact or ultra-terrestrials. Instant. You want to know why, Psychology Today? Why don't you check your back catalog of stories? Where in the same articles you talk about people who believe in UFOs are, they have weird problems with their brain. And this has been an ongoing media psyop since the 50s. And the same government who swore up and down that they're not, oh no, we don't have any UFOs, and they would laugh at the reporters, oh, that's just ridiculous. Why would you even say that? And they'd frame these people like they're morons. And now they're like, oh yeah, all those people we killed and destroyed their lives and stuff. That we were wrong. We didn't really mean it. It was all for national security. Something that, kind of bugs me a little bit, because people have been talking about this stuff for a very, very long time. And it's only because these people have been talking about this that these guys are now coming forward and being like, oh yeah, well, it's probably aliens. Which means that, of course, they won't say it's aliens, which is interesting. Now they say it's non-human intelligence. So that tells me that historically, you don't want to trust anything that these people say. So if they're telling you it's a non-human intelligence and they're being very careful to say it's not aliens, what are they implying there? I mean, they infer that it's aliens, it's beings from a faraway planet, and I think it's things from another, well, they're coming through dimensional gateways. Now, that means it could be from another planet and they're getting here through a dimensional gateway, or it could be something that's on some sort of parallel world. But regardless, I like to refer to them collectively as outworld entities. And there's more than a couple of them, but we'll get into that further. Now, reinforcing this is this fantastic gem from USA Today, which goes to show, you want to know why nobody's talking about UFOs? So on December 6th, the USA Today ran a front page article saying, these researchers say they have serious questions about UFOs and aliens. They don't have serious questions. They just say they have serious questions. About a group of researchers say it's time for academia to get serious about studying UFOs. The movement, championed by the Society for UAP Studies, is wrapping up an international conference aimed at establishing a new discipline, dedicating to studying unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, the more formal term of UFOs. Why is that a more formal term? I mean, this is so psyopy. I'm getting psyop in my mouth. Michael Siphon, the Society's co-founder and president, said he's interested in what he calls the empirically weird. His catch-all phrase encompasses things that blur the lines between the real and the possible. What? Phenomena that defy easy explanation, the spiritual, the paranormal, and the parapsychological, and UAPs. It's everything I do. It's everything I can do not to just use the word UFO in place of UAP because, but let's stay focused. Siphon, who holds a doctorate in the philosophy of science from the University of Maryland, College Park, is hoping the study of UAPs can become the subject of serious, rigorous academic study with the same scientific objectivity of any discipline. Not going to happen, bro, because everybody who's tried to come forward with this, like John Mack, any number of nuclear physicists who've tried to explain this, they get sidelined. They get blackballed inside of... So it's not going to happen because the people who give the universities money will cut off the funding. It's like the whole string theory thing. Talk about barking up the wrong tree. But anyway, the Society for UAP Studies knows it's a tall order. Yeah, it should be it's a tall order to look at the truth, to see what's going on around you, you know, as long as you have the permission of your masters. They know it's a tall order that requires an open mind and an unusual amount of collaboration. No, it really doesn't, actually. Studying UAPs should be scientific and can't be done in a lab, so researchers would have to collaborate and study of the physical and the theoretical. Or, you know, look at the footage, you know, talk to witnesses. Anyway, we're not necessarily taking a position. No, we're not taking a position on whether UAPs are evidence of extraterrestrial life or what their existence could mean for humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Now, let's get a few things straight here. Our place in the universe is on top, okay? We don't bend the knee to anybody because we're humans. That's just how it is. And anybody who tells you that, well, it's our place, I don't care what it is or who it is, I'm not putting any entity, outworld or not, above me on a ladder. If they're more advanced than us, hey, that's awesome, we'll learn from you. But that's like this strange sort of like, oh, well, we're subservient to them. That's this weird, you should watch for that. You'll see that more and more where people are saying things like, oh, it's our place in the universe, and this weird kind of, I don't know, communist sort of crap that gets fed out with these guys. And I don't really buy into that. Now, I'm not 100% for the Emperor, but I am kind of for, you know, the Imperium of Man. I have a little bit more Warhammer 40K kind of approach to this sort of thing. I think humans are pretty awesome. And apparently so do all these aliens, because otherwise, why would they be coming here? Why would they be stealing us? Why would they be trying to be like us? I think we're more powerful than we even realize, and I'm just not going to put that slave collar on myself, and I don't think you should either. This is our world. This is our planet, good or bad. Okay, this planet belongs to us. And people are like, well, no, it doesn't belong to you, actually. Well, you can go join the enemy, because me, I'm part of Team Humanity. And now, that's not to say that we get to be ruthless, evil overlords and destroy the whole place and burn everything, like we've kind of been doing a little bit. But I'm not ready to really just hang up the hat on humanity. I think that the beauty and the art and the grace of humanity is something that is just transcendent. And I think we should get behind it. I don't think we should be so quick to be like, oh, we all suck. Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're pretty awesome, actually. But you'll see this more and more throughout news stories where they talk about our place in the galaxy. Well, wherever our place is, let's just make sure we're moving forward and constantly ascending. That's how I feel about it, and I hope you do too. Because as monster hunters, we're kind of like on the bleeding edge of this stuff. We're going to be field agents for this kind of stuff. And I'm not going to sit there and tell you to go seek some outworld entity. Now, I'm not saying you need to open fire the minute it shows its face, but let's meet these things with some sort of sense of dignity. Let's meet these things on a level playing field where if they've got a lot more technology than us, awesome. But there will come a day when we will have that technology and we will be better for it. Now, this is where me and Jason Reza Georgiani, we agree. I mean, I deeply admire the guy. Let's be clear. The guy's amazing. But he does not believe in good and evil, whereas I do. I think that there is good and there is evil objectively. Like if there's some people who are moral relativists and if you just agree with me and we all agree about what's right and wrong and our society just deems this is okay and this is not okay, then that's where we get our good. No, that's crap. That's totally garbage. There is objectively good and evil. Everything starts getting a bit fuzzy though when you start trying to explain, you know, how that good and evil interacts with each other and who's in charge of that good. Is it like Jesus? Is it, you know, some other religious leader? Is it the ancient, you know, gods? What actually is that? That's a subject for maybe the next show. But let's just understand that humans, right or wrong, that's our team. And you better get behind our team, man, because otherwise you're setting yourself up to be a slave. Now, moving to this is yet another reason why the psychology today and their infinite wisdom is wondering, why aren't they talking about this? Well, it's because the government and the powers that be, and to say the government is kind of a bit of a misnomer. It's not really the government. There are forces, the government's just a group of people that are largely trying to either make money and get power. And there are forces of darkness. There are people that are acting in control of who have a lot of power, that are trying very hard to keep the slaves as slaves. Why are chickens chickens? It's because they don't realize they have wings and they don't know they can fly, and a lot of their wings get clipped. Don't volunteer your wings to be clipped is all I'm saying here. And never has this been more apparent with this next story. UFO transparency stalls again as congressional leaders fail to act despite growing attention. Oh, that's weird, because psychology today said nobody was talking about it. Congressional leadership has abandoned full enactment of the proposal Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act, the UAPDA, Sketchy, after it was not included in the final National Defense Authorization Act, the NDA, for fiscal year 2026, due to be signed by President Trump. Liberation Times understands that the proposed legislation, first introduced in 2023 by then Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat, and Senator Mike Rounds, Republican, and a member of the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, now faces an uncertain future. Pardon my shock. It's not uncertain. Anybody could have told you this was going to happen. This was going to be a nothing burger. There's absolutely no way they're going to be revealing this kind of technology, because the fact that it's going to provide like free energy and give us the ability to, answer a lot of questions is the least. The free energy is the least of it, really. There'll be people that'll be losing money, but the fact that we'll begin to understand that consciousness and the human race is far, far more powerful on an individual, like you yourself, are more powerful than you can possibly imagine. I mean you. I mean every single person who's watching this. We'll be getting into exercises and techniques and things that you can follow, should you choose, if you'd like to build yourself up. It's kind of like martial arts, Everybody can learn them. Some people have a natural talent for them. But we have to understand that even though a punch is a punch is a punch, there's techniques and forms that can be used that will make you pretty formidable. Anyway, in response, Senators Schumer and Rounds entered into a colloquy on the Senate floor, expressing their disappointment with House Republicans and pledged to continue pursuing the full legislation, including the creation of an independent review board, a 9-member panel of U.S. citizens appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. Under the proposal, the board would have the authority to assess and advise the public release of UAP-related information and records, alongside provisions requiring the government to secure possession of any recovered UAP material and the related biological evidence that may have been transferred to private entities, potentially placing it beyond the reach of Congress and the American public. Blah, blah, blah. Problem there is all that's going to be going to private. So we're seeing a lot of this stuff has gone to these, that's why you can't do Freedom of Information Acts on the government, because most of it is owned by private sectors, the Raytheons, the Lockheeds, these defense contractor groups that are defense contractors inside of defense contractors. And, UAP Gerb does a lot of good work on this stuff. You should check out his channel. But they are trying to get us caught up by making them admit this stuff, by making them say that, oh yeah, well, finally we have an admission that it's real. But it's irrelevant. We already know it's real. We have every walk of life, every person we've got leaders of foreign countries. We all know it's a real phenomenon. We need to get past this dog and pony show of did the U.S. Congress say it was real? Did the president say it was real? Nobody listens to who the sitting president is anyway. 50% of the people will, 50% of the people won't. So it's not really about, disclosure has already occurred. It's already happened. We all know it's real. And now it's just this weird scrap to make it, somehow be released. Maybe they want to release that technology. And I suppose, I'm glad there are people that are trying to do it, which is our next story here. The UFO gatekeepers, Representatives Luna, Burchett, and Burleson reveal a plan to fight back. Now, this is from Jeremy Corbell, who does good work. He dropped this on December 12th. Opponents of the UFO-UAP transparency have worked overtime to make life miserable for members of Congress who have been demanding answers and honesty. Those House members who have been at the forefront of the efforts to get straight answers about hidden programs and unauthorized spending have encountered fierce opposition and warnings to back off, and a brick wall of outrageous secrecy from agencies that are constitutionally authorized to oversee. Is the all too brief era of public hearings into UFO truth finished? Those murky agencies, the architects of secrecy, certainly hope so. I would refer to them collectively as the forces of darkness. 3 of the principal champions of UAP transparency in the House admit that more hearings into UFO matters are unlikely to produce the breakthroughs the public expects. But if future hearings are off the table, what is next? Which is true. I mean, what else can we do? Well, there's what these guys are doing, which is good work, don't get me wrong. I just don't really have a lot of faith in government. I can't imagine why, but that's why you're here. We're going to take matters into our own hands. For the Emperor. I mean, for the Imperium of Man. I mean, for the good of humanity. In this extraordinary episode of Weaponized, this is what I've linked to, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are honored to speak with 3 transparency warriors. I don't know, calling them warriors is a bit of a strap. Representatives Anna Paulina Luna, Tim Burchett, and Eric Burleson to hear about the obstacles they faced while they've been thwarted in their efforts to speak with first-hand witnesses, surreptitious intimidation tactic, veiled threats, the possibility of presidential disclosure, and their under-the-radar plans for moving forward. As Representative Anna Paulina Luna, chairman of the Task Force on Government Secrets, put it, why are they blocking us if it's not real? Yeah, it's a good question. Why are they blocking you if it's not real? Disclosure is irrelevant. See my notes. We know it's real. We know it's out there and it's a real thing. Now, it's one thing for me to sit here and tell you that, but let me bring some receipts. And that's something we're going to talk about in a new segment that we're going to be doing on the show called Homework, which we're going to get into right now. The first piece of homework I've got, when you go down in the description and the links, they don't link all back to my stuff because, to be honest with you, there's so many very talented people that have put out amazing work. And I would rather send traffic their way because it's not about the traffic. It's about you getting the information so you can see why I think the way I do. If you disagree with me, that's completely fine, okay? You can disagree, but I will show you my reasoning for this and the evidence that we have. So now when they say that no one's been talking about UFOs and UAPs, I've got news for you. The godfather of all of this, the ultimate power, the original greatest of all time, is Coast to Coast AM. And people will argue if it was Art Bell or George Norrie or George Knapp, who is one of the hosts of Coast to Coast AM. God, I would love to host Coast to Coast AM. But in truth, Coast to Coast AM, which is a radio show, if you've never heard of it, it's a radio show that has been going on since the 80s, maybe even the 70s. Started by Art Bell, where he just began talking to people about all kinds of sighting, big with the trucker crowd. And then those of us who all work security, we're well aware of it. We knew that was the show was amazing. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're hearing people talking about, alien abductions and cattle mutilations. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you have to work with the public, but sometimes it's pretty easy to tell when people are lying just by listening to the tone in their voice. And I encourage you to check out, now, let's be clear, Coast to Coast is a really wild ride. They've got all manner of people in there, and they talk about all manner of things. And some of them, I think, are probably legit. Some of them, maybe not. This particular subject matter, it needs to be said. There's a lot of people with mental health problems in there. There's a lot of people who, probably have some trouble, but that's not the majority, okay? That doesn't negate the people who have seen real things and have had real experiences. And I think it's part of this mind veil which has been put in place on us to make us feel like, oh, well, if that doesn't fit with reality, then, anything that's impossible, no matter what's left, if it's improbable, is probably true. The problem with that statement is that we're not really, what we've been told what is impossible is not so. And when we see reports and we see these things that have been spanning a long period of time, we have to reassess what is actually possible, and then look at the evidence. Look at what these reports say, and then cross-reference them. And this is where the modern age has a difference. Before, it would take you forever. You'd have to be a dork like me and buy 10 million tons of books in order to like go through it all. But now, we've got hot media, which I can deliver to you in today's homework. So our first two is the Coast to Coast AM radio show. Highly recommend it. There's hours of stuff there. Pick your poison. Go with what you like. As well, I've included a link for Coast to Coast Shorts, which is slightly more organized, so you can check out what's in there. But you can't really talk about any sort of homework without starting off with Coast to Coast AM. It's a good place to follow up on after you get through the other homework. Don't work on all this at once. Let's just get through it. I try to portray this in an order so that it's easily more digestible. I have talked about the Y-Files in the past. The Y-Files is an amazing way to shoehorn in to people, but getting past a little bit further past the Y-Files now is what we're going to be talking about. Now, one of the things that I found when I was doing this stuff, because I got into it by trying to understand magic. Like, I didn't want to have like, oh, well, subtle magic that, you know, if you do this, you can subtly shift your energy and raise your... I wanted to throw a fireball. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. Is there a way to throw a fireball? Can I summon some sort of a creature and put it on eBay? Can I do that? That was my original like way into this stuff. Right after, you know, to be fair now, what originally got me into it was Hammer horror films. I mean, nearly see-through nightgowns with like super hot chicks and Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. It's nothing but good stuff. If you haven't seen any of those old Hammer horror films, amazing, super good. They're a little dated now, but it's good after, you know, you've relaxed for a while. Definitely you want to check out the Hammer horror films. But short of hunting vampires, which that's a whole nother show into itself, and I don't mean, well, I kind of do mean the blood-sucking kind, but metaphorical blood-sucking. One of the things that we do have to look at is the missing 411 phenomenon, which is just people who disappear. People disappear all the time and are never seen again, and this doesn't make the news. Now, David Paulides started in with this stuff. Well, he started going over a lot of these search and rescue reports, and there's a lot of people, like one of our users commented on, one of the Monster Hunters commented on in the past show, saying that everyone's got an unreasonable hate on for David Paulides. And the reason why is because he's exposing certain truths that fly in the face of things that, you know, are uncomfortable. Like Bigfoot is not friendly. Sorry, he's not. If you look at the history, he's not. And we can get more into that. So that's my own viewpoint, and I'll base the evidence on it. One of the things that I base this on is this missing 411 stuff. Am I saying that Bigfoot's taking all these people? No, I'm not saying that. I think it's more likely they're going through dimensional portals or something's coming through a dimensional portal and grabbing them. But it's not like we have video evidence of that. Oh, wait. Yes, we do. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. For hot media, let's look at the missing 411 phenomenon. And I have 3 of his movies linked here, which is Missing 411, Missing 411 Hunted, and Missing 411 The UFO Connection. Which, to be fair, when you look at Missing 411 and you look at any of this phenomena, it starts in different positions. You can look at like the Gateway program, and you can look at astral projection or out-of-body experiences, look at UFOs, you look at Bigfoot, ghosts, poltergeists, and there comes a point when it all starts to merge together. We're talking about the phenomenon. We're talking about something that is a very real thing, and it all starts to link together. And that's where people, for some reason, and I think this is a little bit fabricated, the UFO guys hate the Bigfoot guys, and the Bigfoot guys hate the ghost guys, and everybody hates each other, and there's all this infighting. And I want monster hunters to be a unified tribe, okay? Because if things are happening and we're getting these reports, we need to get over ourselves. We need to take a look at what this data is. One thing's for sure, there are people that are going missing, and they're showing up again in weird circumstances. And this is something we need to look at. So, moving past the missing person phenomenon, the homework that I've got set up for you is basically going to bring you up to speed on the UFO stuff. The Missing 411 films that I've listed there, Missing 411, Missing 411 Hunted, and the UFO Connection, provided you saw I'll link the research version of my show as well, so you can go over that, because there's 3 links there that give you about 3 hours of audio of interviews of David Paulides covering many more cases that are outlined in these films. In The Hunted, he goes over hunters, which is a pretty telling thing. You've got guys in the bush with guns who know the bush, who are there to kill stuff. That's what they're there to do. And they, poof tech, do the funky teleport, and they're gone. All their kit is gone. All their gear is gone, and they're never found. Or if they are found, it's found in really, really weird ways. And these aren't bear attacks. These aren't people who fall down crevices. There's something very strange going on with this. And we can get more into that as we go forwards. I haven't got it all figured out. And to be honest, I don't need to know what the truth is. I just need to know when other people are lying. And I think that's almost as good, because that way we can kind of move towards the truth. The next area, where I've got a whole bunch of homework, and boy do I have homework for you on this, is in the UFO phenomenon. So James Fox has just come out with a secondary documentary based on his first, but his work is, James Fox's documentaries are probably some of the best in the field, I would say. His first one that I saw that I thought was amazing, which I've linked in the description, is called I Know What I Saw. And this is an amazing UFO film, followed with Out of the Blue, which he likes better than I Know What I Saw, but I honestly think that I Know What I Saw is one of the best UFO films ever made. Followed by The Phenomena, which governs over what the government refers to this whole thing collectively as. This whole extra-dimensional, Bigfooty, UFO, people missing, all that is collectively referred to as The Phenomena, which is the third film of this. These are all full docs. You can watch them, each one. I mean, I say this kind of casually. I've already dropped, like, 6-10 hours worth of stuff on you. But don't worry, it's getting better. Then the program covers in depth what we just talked about in the news stories, where they're going over the governmental denial and the loops and the red tapes that they've got to go through in order to look at this stuff. And you see that it's all kind of, it's sort of repetitive. Like, they just have this, the Age of Disclosure just came out, but that's not so different from these documentaries I've just linked here. Moment of Contact is what James Fox made about an incident that happened in Virginia, Virginia. And there was a crashed craft with a creature that smelled like sulfur that was probably not from this. What else smells like sulfur historically? Escapes me now. There are beings you summon. They smell like salt. Weird. I can't think of it at the time, but I'm sure it'll come to me. But in Moment of Contact, he went down there thinking this is crap. There was no UFO that crashed in the favelas, and then people saw aliens running around, and then the government grabbed them. This is ridiculous. And then he goes down there. He gets his monkey little mind blown. So much so that he came out with a second, just on the 20th of this month, film, which has even more information on this. In American Alchemy did an interview with him. So Moment of Contact is there. You can watch the whole thing for free. And American Alchemy, Moment of Contact, his new film is called Moment of Contact, New Revelations of Alien Encounters, where he talks to like head neurosurgeons, people who operated on the bodies. Again, disclosure is irrelevant. This is a real thing. And I don't think they're from space. I don't. Maybe some of them could be. But I think that wherever they're coming from, they're coming through some kind of dimensional gate. And to get a good taste of this history, now, the James Fox stuff I just all relayed to you, that's pretty easily digestible stuff. But for those of you out there that are hardcore, I mean hardcore, and you wouldn't want to get brought up to speed historically on everything and just granular, painful detail, I've listed to the playlist for the Citizens' Hearings on UFO Disclosure, which is 30 hours of hearings that were put together because they wouldn't do, back in the day, I think this was, I want to say like 2012, somewhere in there. They did I could be wrong on that. They did they wouldn't get a hearing, so they hired former senators to do a mock hearing. They just put on their own hearing and they put former senators up there, and then they brought in all the evidence. And I mean, everybody showed up to this thing. You'll see the people I was just talking, Jeremy Corbell's in the background. Who's who in the zoo is there. So if you want to bring yourself up to speed very, very quickly without too much repetition, the citizen hearings on UFO disclosures, all 30 hours of it. And if your partner can sit with you through that, your spouse or significant other, man, you should keep them because it is some dry stuff. But for me, this was just awesome. I like binged on this. It's 30 hours of good stuff. And then probably one of the ultimate interviews ever put on film following the citizen hearing on disclosure is the American Alchemy episode with Harold Malmgren that Jesse Michael did, where Harold Malmgren was an advisor to like 4 presidents. He's arguably been in, like, this guy has been with every single presidency since the days of like Nixon. It's crazy. And this guy has come out, yeah, I handled alien materials, all this is real. They got footage of like nukes shooting down UFOs in there. It's an amazing piece of media. And then the week after Jesse Michaels talked to him, he got transferred to another hospital and died. Yeah, not sketchy at all. I personally think that the death of Harold Malmgren was sketch, like the guy was an old guy, and that's why I was talking about this stuff. But the timing seems a bit off where he starts disclosing, like, when you listen to this interview, it is crazy stuff, the amount of stuff he's been letting go. And then suddenly Jesse Michaels starts talking to him and he winds up dead. And finally, a documentary in the UFOs that is hard to get through for different reasons because it watches like an episode of Ancient Aliens. The way they shot this is amazingly annoying. And they have, you just got to get through it. All right. But, stick with it because they actually have footage of a dimensional porthole opening in the sky and a ship flying through it. It is what it is. You look at it, there's nothing else that could be. And the documentary is called A Tear in the Sky. And I've linked to it below. It's about 90 minutes. The whole documentary could be summed up in 15 minutes. And it's a documentary that not a lot of people talk about. And I'm not really sure why. It has a 5 out of 10 rating, probably because they don't like the way it was filmed or how they did, the build up and everything, which I'll be honest is kind of annoying. But the footage that they captured it's undeniable. There's a dimensional gate that opens and a ship flies through it. And that's why we need to understand that these are outworld entities. Now, maybe they're coming here and they're able to focus in on us, and I've got some theories on that. We can get into that later. But one thing's for sure, that was a dimensional portal that opened, and that was a ship that came through it. So it kind of puts to sleep this whole notion of like, oh, they came from millions and millions of miles away, and, they flew here, and they had like occupational ships that they live in for no, none of that stuff, man. They're coming through dimensional portals. Maybe they're coming from another planet within our own like universe. Maybe they're coming from a parallel universe. I can't tell you that. But one thing's for sure, they're coming through dimensional portholes. And this brings us neatly to Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot, as they call it, which is a really kind of funny sort of term for this massive 8-foot tall creature that's like the size of a sheet of plywood. And let's be clear, they have sightings of these things that range up to 21 feet tall up in the Yukon and stuff. And there's ones that are down to like 2 and 3 feet tall. And very, very quickly, I mean, it's easy to believe that you have, some sort of lost race of Australopithecus or something. Okay, fine. But when you start talking about the fact that something could be coming here from another realm, something could be like gating here, things get very, very, very weird. Now, the other side of this is that there's the two schools of thought. One is, of course, Bigfoot is, the BFRO stance is, it's a monkey. Spoiler alert, it's not a monkey. I'm really sure it's not a monkey. Whatever this thing is, even if it doesn't come from another dimension, this thing is not a monkey. It's got abilities and it's got some because you have to look at all the reports on the whole. You have to take in all of these reports. Now, the problem is, when you look at what they call the woo-woo aspect of Bigfoot, there are people that may even be paid actors who are saying, oh no, I have mind speak and we leave gifts of them and they give gifts back. And I'm not saying that they're not having an experience, but I'm not sure that experience is coming from Bigfoot. Okay, unless you see a creature that matches that description, you're engaged with some other part of the phenomenon or you're lying. So we're just going to trust people here. Okay, we're just going to go forward on good faith because they're like, if you have people that are doing the same kind of reports that have happened for hundreds of years, which we've already talked about this, but that's what I mean. And if you have individuals who are just coming out with stuff and you get that feeling like, I don't know, man, this seems kind of sketch and the stories they tell. And in some of these documentaries, like a good one on this, which I liked, is A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And I've linked to them, they have a channel now. And some of the people on that channel, I think, are telling the truth. I think some of these people are definitely involved with some sort of layer of the phenomenon that we're not really sure about. And other ones, meh, I reserve judgment on that. And they follow it up with one that's even more along that line of like, well, there's some really wild stuff in this one. It's called Flash of Beauty 2, Paranormal Bigfoot. And people get very sketchy about that. But those who are in the field, like the guy who did the recordings, the samurai chatter and all that, he's pretty sure that these are not regular creatures that just exist here. There's something else that's going on. And so to do the homework, check that out. Following that, okay, people say they've seen these things, but can we map it? Of course they've mapped it. There's a thing called the Bigfoot Mapping Project, which you should take a look at, which lists this huge amount of sightings. It's all over the United States and the world. And the focus of the map is on the United States. But you can see quite plainly that these things are seen so much that they must be going somewhere. Because there's no way that an 8 to 10 foot tall hairy hominid would be running around all over the United States without getting shot. Like, I promise you that's going to happen. And in BC, we have a lot of wilderness up here. So some people are like a lot more akin to the idea of, oh, it's a monkey and it lives in the wilderness. I don't think so. I just think that we have so much wilderness here. Whatever the phenomenon is that's doing this, it's more prevalent here, up here in BC, because there's less people here. We should have no sightings in British Columbia, because if this thing was an ape that was just running around in the bushes, it has a million places it could go where it would never have to see anybody. Why is it always on the edge of humanity? Why is that happening? So the other thing too, that the woo crowd, you'll see this, is they're all like, oh, they're our brothers and they're the caretakers of the forest and we approach them with love, which is fine. That's totally fine. Except it's not what the evidence shows. Almost all encounters of these things, dogs are ultra freaked of these things. I mean, dogs will attack tigers, elephants, raging bulls, whatever, but not these things. They won't track these things. So that's what leans me towards there's some kind of outworld thing going on here. And I'll send a link to a series of programs and reports from a very unpopular guy in the Bigfoot field called Bigfoot Terror in the Woods. Check his stuff out. And for monster hunters, it starts to bring things back into focus here, because I can't think of another creature that would be as dominant as Bigfoot in the woods. We should be thick with Bigfoots. There's nothing that preys on them. I don't care how long their mating cycle is. We should be overwhelmed by these things, but we're not. Where do they go? They're going somewhere, and it's not back into the woods. And finally, probably the best thing I've seen, because I actually paid for American Sasquatch, David Paulides' latest film, and watched it. It's worth the watch. I didn't pay for Age of Disclosure. I haven't seen it, but I've listed a bunch of stuff because it's all the rehash of the same stuff. But Paulides has a way of bringing into focus in a sharp format, being a former detective, a lot of the stuff which is really remarkable. And while I can't link to the actual program online, he did do an interview with the Flash of Beauty guys, which is a 45-minute long interview and links extensively to the film, like extensively. So you definitely want to check that out. And just keep an open mind here, because we're dealing with something, again, we have the video footage of a warp opening in space-time and a ship coming through there. And I have reason to believe that these gateways can be opened either psionically, or maybe they're probably naturally occurring. And there's a lot of evidence for that, which we'll be getting into that later. But let's get through our homework first. And finally, getting back into this whole PSI research, because what do you mean, psionics, Sean? Are you talking about like mental power? Yes, mental powers are a real thing. We know they're a real thing. The government has admitted it's a real thing. And Annie Jacobson, who is not really a member of this field. She does serious journalism. She just came out with a book called The Phenomenon, which I invite you to check out because it explains and gets very deep in her audiobook, which I mentioned, Audible, and she has an amazing voice. Oh my God, I would listen to her read cooking instructions. It's amazing. But Annie Jacobson's book, The Phenomenon, is definitely something you want to get on Audible because it brings into focus just how serious and real this is with the government. I've linked to quite an extensive interview where she talks about her book, and you will get a real taste for what's going on here to see that there's a real there. And to follow that up, I of course have a link to the Black Vault Stargate collection. And the Stargate collection is all of the remote viewing and PSI Research documents that have been released, so you can cross-reference this stuff. And once you get through this and you can see how all this stuff connects, it's pretty hard to deny what's directly in front of you. Now, at any point, and I should say this, it's probably worthwhile for you to be like, oh, this is too weird for me, man. I'm out. That's fine. It's probably healthy. I don't know why I've been as obsessed with this stuff for years and staring at the puzzle, trying to make it all work together. But I have. And that's what Sean Hunt's Monsters is about. I believe there's other people out there that are like me. People who are willing to face this and go, yeah, no matter where the data leaves, this theory makes sense. And if you don't agree with my theories, that's fine. If you're like, dude, what? Naturally occurring portals? Are you out of your mind? I don't, maybe, but I mean, I'm not making it up. And there's only so many theories that will fit the facts that we have. And as we go through this, as we investigate further with cryptids, you ever notice how all the cryptids are long-ranging predators, things that travel huge distances? You never find like mammoths. They're always like some animal that covers a lot of ground. And that's why I think they might go through these portals, but I digress. As we go forwards, the portal theory is the one that I think makes sense. And it's something that as monster hunters, we need to be aware of. And if we consider that that's actually one of the things that is involved with the phenomenon, it becomes kind of obvious why the government would want to keep this quiet. Because holy cow, that's pretty wild stuff. Until next week, monster hunters, everybody stay safe.